back today with Fight Night Picks. Parry and Counter. We're getting into the middleweight Grand Prix, the FNP Middleweight Grand Prix. Let us know. Do you like the bracket that's over there? Maybe you disagree and you want to see a couple of fighters switched around. Maybe you're a big Krzysztof Jotko fan. You want to see him popped in there. Maybe you're a big, I don't know, Elias Theodorou fan. You want to see him at 185 in this. Maybe you do. We have some different fighters in here because, again, at 185, it's a bit more shallow than some of the other divisions that we've profiled in the past, including lightweight, featherweight, welterweight, but still a lot of good talent. We've got a couple of different names from different organizations, including Bellator's Anatoly Tokov. We have KSW's Scott Askham. A lot of people might be familiar with him.
Gegard Mousasi, of course.
Gegard Mousasi, who's going to be competing for the promotion's middleweight title against Douglas Lima coming up here, hopefully, in 2020. And we also have Alexander Shlemenko, who's back over fighting in Russia, but not with M1 Global. He's been fighting with Fight Nights Global, RCC. He's been fighting with different organizations. So he's in there as well, and for reasons that we'll get into later on. But still, as a bracket of 16 at 185 pounds, a lot of big names, a lot of guys that can certainly finish fights. Not a lot of boring fights either in this opening round of 16. Who do you have your eye on? What's the fight that you're most excited about in this one?
A fight that was originally, it was scheduled, it was matched up until like the day before the actual fight. Kelvin Gastelum and Robert Whittaker. I'm such a big Robert Whittaker fan. I'm not going to make that a secret right now. Just, if you like watching fights, you probably like Robert Whittaker. A very fan-friendly style if you've ever seen him fight before.
But the same thing could be said about Kelvin Gastelum.
Exactly. Kelvin Gastelum, lightning fast hands. He's really only had one boring fight, and that was his last one against Darren Till, where he was just kind of out-awkwarded by Darren Till, if that's even a word. Till was just kind of able to out-trick him, if you will, throughout 3 rounds, but still a good performance by Gastelum. Two guys who you know they're just going to kind of stand and bang for 25 minutes. I think Whittaker has a few X factors that he does a little bit better than Gastelum, but that fight, I really wish it happened the first time, and I hope it does get made in the future. So that's my most exciting one.
For me, it's a fight where you've got a guy that's on the rise, and he's got a really good record of 29-3, and he's taking on one of the best that's ever really done it, but never won a title, in Yoel Romero and Anatoly Tokov. And you could say, listen, we're going to get into it. The fact that Anatoly Tokov, he's faced some decent competition in the past. He's got wins over Racho Darpinian, Gerald Harris in recent memory. But that Gerald Harris fight was not easy. He was matched up against Fabio Aguiar, who had a great record. And, you know, you talk about fights that were scrapped right before. That was the last Bellator event that was scrapped just hours before it was supposed to happen. His brother was actually on the card as well. But Anatoly Tokov is one of those prospects at 185 that I think if he can continue winning in an impressive fashion, he's going to get in front of a lot of people and they're going to know his name. But it's just unfortunate that he's drawing Yoel Romero in this first round. But we'll get into that. So if we run through this quickly, and this is just a reminder, if this is the first video that you've watched out of the Grand Prix series, the fact that this is a Pride-style tournament. This is happening in one night, and all of these fights are 5-minute round, not main events, but they're all 5-round fights. Also, in terms of the seeding, you might think, hey, it's kind of weird. Why is Robert Whittaker at 6? Why is Gastelum at 11 and Shlemenko's at 10? Our champion in every single round we have is number 1. Everybody else we hit shuffle 5 or 6 more times in our bracket maker, and that's why the chips fell where they are. So if you disagree with that, that's just the reasoning behind it. And it's a really interesting thing because you have to take damage and fatigue into account as this continues on and progresses. And I know for sure at 185 pounds that that's going to come out in the wash. Now, our first fight up at the top, a fight that a lot of people are really excited to see. Jared Cannonier and Israel Adesanya, your UFC champion. And it's a fun fight because Jared Cannonier, go back and look at him at heavyweight. He lost a fight to Justin Ledet.
Oh, what a story, just first of all, about Jared Cannonier. Came into the UFC just looking like another guy. He was kind of big for heavyweight, sort of built like DC, if you will. And then it's kind of crazy to imagine that, because think of heavyweight Jared Cannonier, again, built like DC. And then you think of middleweight Jared Cannonier, who I don't know if he has any fat, but he's the most muscular man in the world. He's a really good striker, too. Definitely has the power advantage over Israel Adesanya. I think it's a really fun fight. Here's my problem, though. A lot of people want to label Jared Cannonier kind of the dark horse of the division. I don't know if I'm ready for that just yet. I think beating Jacare Hermansson tells me a lot about you. I don't know if Jacare Hermansson's the type of opponent, though, who gets you into that title discussion. I think he needs one more, and I think he will have to fight either, a Darren Till, or Robert Whittaker, or Kelvin Gastelum. Just one of those guys near the top of the division. Maybe Edmen Shahbazyan. That could be a lot of fun. But I don't know if he's ready for Adesanya right yet. A lot of guys go in fighting Adesanya, trying to knock him out, and that would be Jared Cannonier's path of victory. He's not going to submit him. He's definitely not going to out-finesse him for 25 minutes, if you will. So we'd have to stop him, and I just don't think Adesanya's the guy we'd be able to beat.
The thing with Jared Cannonier, tons of power. It's just typically a stationary target. And with
slow.
Jacare Manson, too, that was a really telling win for me. I mean, that was a huge step up in competition and a really big win closer to the top of the division. And Jacare Manson, in his own right, was on a really big win streak as well. But if you look at it in terms of this fight, Israel Adesanya is about as elusive as a guy that there is, and unless you're Alex Pereira in glory, he's pretty darn hard to hit.
Just people need to stop saying that on Twitter, like, oh, Alex Pereira knocked him out. If you know anything about combat sports, Alex Pereira is basically like Mike Tyson right now in glory kickboxing. He's champ, and it's not even close what he's doing to these other like professional kickboxers where all they do is strike. So people need to stop bringing up that fight like it has anything to do with MMA.
Yeah, the guy's 2-1 in MMA, so I don't know if it would translate there. But that's the thing in this fight. Jared Cannonier is such a heavy hitter. I just don't know if he's going to be able to actually hit. And like you said, out-finesse the current champion, Israel Adesanya. Adesanya moving on. The next fight, Paulo Costa, Derek Brunson.
This is fun, I think.
Really interesting fight, but there's an issue for me and a clear path to victory for 100%. Me. The fact that if you're able to back up Derek Brunson, you're pretty well able to stifle his offense. We saw that with Jacare Souza when he fought Brunson in his hometown or close to his hometown. We saw that
Whittaker head kicked him
in all sorts of different fights. So that's kind of the clear path to victory. And with Paulo Costa, you saw what he was able to do against Uriah Hall. You saw what he was able to do against Big Rig Johnny Hendricks. You saw what he was able to do against Yoel Romero. I just think if he's able to push and push. And again, the issue might be this is a 5-round fight. I would still anticipate Paulo Costa being able to finish this fight.
I agree.
If he isn't, it's going to be tough on him in the next round. But we saw Paulo Costa able to withstand at least 3 rounds with Yoel Romero and pass the test.
So Paulo Costa definitely wins this fight, and he probably wins this fight by stoppage too. I don't think Derek Brunson really has the chin to be able to stay in there with Paulo Costa for 25 minutes. I think this would give you 1 round of the year, though. I really do. I think the first round of this fight would be insane. Because Derek Brunson, you can say what you want about him, he doesn't have the best chin in the world, but just as a talent, he's a phenomenal wrestler.
Oh, yeah.
And he still hits really, 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 really hard. I know Elias Theodorou was able to, out-evade the knockout strike, but it was just Derek Brunson is still one of the best fighters in the world. Whether people want to recognize that or not, I still have him as he's not on that top tier of middleweights in the world, but he's in that second, maybe third. He's still up there. He's still a very good top 15 talent. And I think he'd go out there. I think he'd try to wrestle Paulo Costa a little bit. I think he'd kind of feel that power though, and then he'd be forced to strike with him. Brunson's going to land some good shots throughout this fight. Again, he is an extremely powerful athlete, but Paulo Costa is just...
If Thunder from Down Under and a man who's taped up from gill to gill in Dan Kelly was able to get a win over you, then I would anticipate Paulo Costa...
Derek Brunson knocked out Dan Kelly in 10 seconds.
Did he though?
Yeah, he did. He hit him with an overhead.
I'm pretty sure Dan Kelly came out the winner and just kept coming out with more and more rolls of tape for every fight after that. But still... Dan Kelly reference needed at middleweight, but yeah, like you said, I mean, Derek Brunson, such a powerful athlete, so much force in those strikes, and that overhand right's one of the toughest punches in the game.
I think it's fair to say this fight would be a lot more competitive than people think just by seeing the names matched up, but I think we can all agree we know who the winner would be. Paulo Costa just has so much power and the force that he puts on.
And it's a similar type of idea in the next fight. Yoel Romero, Anatoly Tokov, so much force in the punches and in the strikes of Anatoly Tokov. Maybe I would also question the cardio as well. You look at some of the losses on his record. There's only 3. 2 of them are to people that we've already talked about, or maybe you'd know, but Ramzan Ameev was one of them over an M1, and the other one was really early on Magomed Karimov, who's actually, a welterweight. So at 185, taking on a really good wrestler in Yoel Romero. If you know what the game plan is that he doesn't do well against wrestlers, and again, Yoel Romero, not as much of a wrestler as he is more of a kickboxer, but still, I would favor Yoel Romero in this fight, even at his age. Go back and watch that Tokov fight and how Gerald Harris wasn't able to totally annihilate him. I don't know.
Exactly. Tokov took an overhead left straight on the chin from Gerald Harris. And he has been hit clean in the past, too. That it's not like that was the one time he's been hit clean.
It didn't just drop him, it flattened him.
Oh, exactly. And the fact that he was able to kind of withstand that and win, it just tells you how much heart he has. But that's my problem. If Gerald Harris is able to almost put you away with a really good shot, that shot's what Yoel Romero is kind of known for. That overhand left is one of Romero's best techniques. So if a guy who, and no disrespect to Gerald Harris, he was near the end of his career when he did fight Tokov, but if a guy like Harris is able to put you down and not really being known for a striker, more of a wrestler, grappler type, Yoel Romero is going to put you away pretty quickly, I would think.
So the next fight, we have the former Bellator middleweight champion, former Dream champion, everything champion, Gegard Mousasi, one of the most decorated combat sports athletes out there and still competing, taking on former UFC fighter Scott Askham, who, listen, his UFC career wasn't that great. Like, it really didn't go all that well. He lost, 3 in a row before he left? But since then, on a 5-fight win streak, 4 of them finishes. He's fought Michael Matula twice, 2 big wins there. Marcin Wojcik, big win there. But his last fight was really like if he retired tomorrow, it'd still be a pretty cool story to say that I beat Mamed Khalidov in KSW at my weight class. Now, for Scott Askham, the unfortunate thing here is the fact that he's taking on Gegard Mousasi. The weird thing is, and I want to say this in this fight, both guys pretty nonchalant fighters.
Oh, yeah. There would not be a great press conference if you put these guys together for one, because they would both probably look like they're about to fall asleep, and then they get
or just smoke a pack of darts.
One or the other. There's really no in between. I don't think this would be your most entertaining fight in this first round. And again, this is a first round involving fights between Derek Brunson and Paulo Costa, Darren Till and Jacare Hermansson, Robert Whittaker and Kelvin Gastelum. So that's not like that mean of a thing to say about these two guys. But Mousasi would really work behind the jab well in this fight, I think. I think his power would come through in the later rounds against Askham. Askham would be able to get a few things off. I think he might be able to secure a takedown here and there. He might be able to get a few good pieces of offense going off. But Gegard Mousasi, no matter what stage of his career he's in, as a skill set, I know he's had a few things that fail him. Sometimes in some fights his takedown defense won't be great, and then he'll lose that fight because of that. In some fights, he'll have singular parts of his game that might sort of fail him on any given night. But as a whole, Gegard Mousasi is still one of the better 185s in the world. I think he'd win this fight by decision, but I don't think this would be one of those knock him down, drag him out type of brawls.
No, but one of those ones that would probably be quite tiring. We'll keep that in mind going into the next round. Now, your next fight, Jacare Souza versus Edmen Shahbazyan. Listen, Jacare in Strikeforce was at the top. Jacare in the UFC for quite a while was at the top of the middleweight division. Then it kind of started to falter a little bit. He went up to 205. Now he's back down to 185. What's going to be the plan going forward? I don't know. I'm not talking to Jacare on a day-to-day basis. Maybe you are. But taking on Edmen Shahbazyan, really interesting fight because for Shahbazyan, really on the up and up, especially in that weight class of 185 pounds, really putting together some great wins. And it's still a tough fight. Like, 100%. It's still a show-me fight here. So for Shahbazyan to be taking this fight against Jacare, I mean, what do you make of it?
So they call these fights crossroad fights. It's either the young prospect beats that, proven veteran, and then they move up in the weight class and they do start fighting those top 3 guys, or, that the wily old veteran kind of turns away the prospect, and then the prospect has to go back and kind of rework on their game. That's exactly what this fight would be. And it's sort of a weird fight because Jacare at his best, and we have seen him at his best not that long ago. You bring up the Brunson fight, that was less than 2 years ago. He was able to win by knockout. He's had really good performances, but inconsistency, at least as of late, sort of been the story of Jacare's career. The Jacare Hermansson fight was really a big head-scratcher because I went into that thinking, okay, Jacare Hermansson's a good fighter, but guys like Jacare don't lose to guys like Jacare Hermansson. And that sounds really disrespectful, and I understand it kind of is, but just when, at the time at least, that's how you thought of that fight. And he just kind of got tired early on, got out-volumed for a lot of the fight, and never was really able to get any kind of offense going. He just never got the momentum started. And Edmen Shahbazyan, I think his skill set would be able to kind of do the same thing to Jacare. He'd be able to stifle him enough so that he could avoid the big power shots and avoid the takedown attempts and just kind of patter him for the rest of the fight.
Here's the issue moving forward. Edmen Shahbazyan, we've seen it. He's been a quick starter lately. Ever since the Darren Stewart fight, bam, 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 bam. I'm in there, finishing fights, putting on great performances, but that Darren Stewart fight was like, he won that by a hair.
Yeah,
like,
he did.
Somebody maybe needed to, I don't know, maybe there was a debt to settle or something, because that fight was really close, wire thin. And in this fight against Jacare, if you're able to squeak out a decision, because I think it'd be really tough to stop him. And I mean, you go back, okay, let's take Jacare's fight against Jan Blachowicz at 205. You think Jan Blachowicz, after fighting that fight, would have a good performance in his next fight?
I think he broke both his feet, so no.
Yeah, I think he'd be hard-pressed to have another good fight. So for Edmen Shahbazyan to get a win against Jacare, it's going to be a really tough one. A telling one, and one if it was to just be a singular fight, and whether it was 3 rounds or 5 rounds, it would really propel him into another really good fight. If you're Edmen Shahbazyan, I do think he'd win as well.
You call for this fight like there's no tomorrow.
It's a tough fight, though, moving on in our bracket here in a one-night tournament. So we move on to the next fight, one of your favorite fights of this round of 16. Robert Whittaker, Kelvin Gastelum, like you said, a fight that was booked before, a fight that hopefully will happen. I know there's been some back and forth on Twitter, and there's been some talk of Robert Whittaker taking a different fight, but still, if he was to take this fight against Kelvin Gastelum, I think it would be a really entertaining one, and one that even if you don't get a finish in this fight, that's probably your fight of the bracket.
Oh, 100%. These guys are gonna. Okay, both guys are getting concussions in round 1. That's not good moving forward.
This is a Julian Lane type of fight. Let me bang, bro.
The best way of describing it, really. Robert Whittaker might have some of the best pure kickboxers we've seen in the UFC. And I know, Israel Adesanya knocked him out, but still, you got knocked out by the best kickboxer in the UFC. So, no real shame in that. And from what we see from Robert Whittaker, again, he's got nothing but toughness. Crazy cardio too. Like, if you can withstand the punishment that he's been able to take through some of these 5-round fights and still be throwing by that, minute 20 to 25, it just tells you a lot about the person. Kelvin Gastelum too, and that Israel Adesanya fight, he's made of that special stuff, and that's really the only way I can describe it, because when push comes to shove, Kelvin Gastelum's going to be there for all of it. A really hard guy to finish. He's only ever been dropped a handful of times in his career. Israel Adesanya was able to drop him about 3 times. I'm pretty sure those are the only 3 times he's actually ever been dropped in his UFC career. It would be your fight of the night, like you said. Both guys, it would be back and forth, back and forth. I just think Whittaker has a little bit more championship experience, and it would help him in that 4th and 5th round. Because with Gastelum, we saw, especially against Jacare, he got a little tired by that 3rd round, and he admitted about it. He said that, the weight cut wasn't great, the travel, whatever it may be. But Whittaker, we've never seen have that issue no matter what, and I feel like that would be the one thing that pushes him over the edge.
And another fight for poor Jacare Souza. I mean, wow, what a close fight in Brazil too. How crazy the way that one went.
And then when you look at what Robert, and again, MMA math doesn't matter, but when you look at what Whittaker was able to do against Jacare, where he didn't get hit at all and then head kicked him multiple times and put him down, like, it was as close to a flawless performance as you can possibly get. That's why I got the title shot off it. But I can't stress enough just how entertaining this fight would be, but I do think Whittaker wins.
I think Whittaker wins as well. And another thing for Kelvin Gastelum fans out there, and you don't really hear this as much in MMA, but I think it certainly applies to Kelvin Gastelum, especially if you watch any of his performances since he's been at 185 pounds. Some of the best dirty boxing and close work
100%.
that he's able to do in the entire sport. He's great from in close, really good boxing technique, really, really good stuff from him. And from Whittaker, he can get it done anyway in the cage, especially on the feet. Both stances, but as well, very good fighter from distance. Now, we saw Israel Adesanya, I wouldn't say expose that, but he was able to find success.
I just think Whittaker had a bad game plan in that. Like, if those guys fight again, not to say Adesanya won't knock him out again, but I think it would be closer. That's pretty much it. I just think Whittaker didn't show his best against Adesanya. I think Gastelum did show his best against Adesanya. I think Whittaker beats Gastelum by the narrowest of margins.
Now, here's your wild card, and I know a lot of people are going to say in the comments, why is Alexander Shlemenko in there? What are you doing putting him in there? Listen, this guy, former Bellator middleweight champion, became a champion with the likes of Hector Lombard, Gegard Mousasi, Brandon Halsey. Listen, Alexander Shlemenko, if he's going to put on a performance in a cage, you're going to want to watch it because it's going to be all-out slobber knocker of a fight. And whether he's winning or losing, whether it's a fight against Bruno Silva, who, listen, MMA fans, you should have been excited about Bruno Silva. He popped with USADA, but still, Bruno Silva is such an explosive and entertaining athlete.
Really, Craig?
Alexander Shlemenko, really good fighter in his own right, and listen, has had a really close fight. When Gegard Mousasi came over to Bellator, they matched them up. Shlemenko was able to hurt Mousasi, really close up the eye. They gave the win to Mousasi, but a lot of people, myself included, thought Shlemenko won. Shlemenko's last fight, and you might say this guy's not a top 15 middleweight anymore, but he was able to beat David Branch over in Russia in his last fight. So you take that, and a guy who's consistently inconsistent in Shlemenko, but there's always power. Now he's taking on another consistently inconsistent guy in Uriah Hall, who's actually on a 2-fight win streak. And even the fight before that, which was against Paulo Costa, and if you go into UFC stats, they're not going to call it a knockdown, but he knocked down Paulo Costa in that fight. Really good fight. But the thing is, you got a quick starter in Shlemenko, you got a slow starter in Uriah Hall. But in a 5-round fight like this, I would want to favor the guy who's one of the weirder, wonkier kickboxers in MMA in Uriah Hall.
I agree. It's kind of funny, though, because that can be said for both guys. I mean, Shlemenko's known for being one of the originators for actually throwing spinning back fists a lot in MMA. Like, it's one of his regular techniques. And it's kind of Alexander Shlemenko facing the next evolution of his own style. And I know Andrei Koreshkov is kind of the next evolution of his own style, but when you look at Koreshkov and Uriah Hall fight, they're pretty similar. Just Uriah Hall has a lot more pop behind his shots. And say what you will about Hall, we kind of preface this with both guys are so inconsistent, but let's take both guys on their best day. Uriah Hall in his best day, I don't know if he can still be UFC champion. I know people have long said that since tough, but Uriah Hall in his best day is at least at a minimum a top 10 UFC talent, and I don't think Shlemenko is at that level. I think Hall's quite a bit bigger. I think he's quite a bit more explosive, especially at this point in their career. Shlemenko is definitely not in his prime anymore, and I think Hall might finally be kind of getting into his, so I'll say Hall by TKO, but I think this would be an exciting fight.
Yeah, like if I can pick out 3 of Uriah Hall's losses in the UFC, first of all, he beat Gegard Mousasi handily the one time, knocked him out. Then he got finished by Gegard Mousasi. He has a loss to Robert Whittaker. He has a loss to Paulo Costa. I mean, those are top guys in the world. Gegard Mousasi is still a top fighter in the world. You can say what you want, that he went over to Bellator, and maybe they don't have the best fighters, but he's still one of the better ones out there. This fight, though, really entertaining fight. I'm taking Uriah Hall. Interesting nonetheless. And then the last one, another really interesting fight. Jacare Hermansson versus Darren Till. How Darren Till made 170 pounds, I do not know. He barely did. And he had a really hard time doing it one of the last times. Let's just throw that out there. So, Darren Till at 185 looks like an absolute world beater. And he's back in title contention, back in the top of another division. He's taking on Jacare Hermansson, who, listen, this guy is kind of like a Swiss Army knife. And I know his last fight against Jared Cannonier didn't go well. It was kind of like a hometown fight. They had it in Europe. He's European. So is Darren Till. But still, this fight, interesting nonetheless. What do you make of it?
I think Darren Till knocks out Jacare Hermansson pretty quickly.
So
It's nothing against Jacare Hermansson, but this is Jacare Hermansson's game. He's going to go for volume takedowns and volume striking, but there's not a lot behind either one. He's got that really nice like inverted guillotine that really only he uses, but other than that, that's kind of his signature move. Other than that, he's just kind of good at everything else. Darren Till's as good at Muay Thai as you can possibly get. He in the fight against Gastelum, I know it wasn't the most exciting fight, but it really showed a lot about Darren Till because he felt Gastelum's power. He got hit by not many great shots because again the fight wasn't that entertaining, but we saw that Darren Till's chin isn't the problem. I think the weight cut was a big problem with him at 170. That's why Maslow was able to knock him out. That's why Woodley was able to drop him before submitting him. I think the weight cut really did it did take a lot of the performances of Darren Till, and at 185. Jacare Hermansson got knocked out by Jared Cannonier, who barely threw a full power uppercut. Like, I know he was kind of moving into it. It was one of those really weird finishes, but if Jared Cannonier, who I get, he fought at heavyweight, there's a big size difference between him and Darren Till. But if Jared Cannonier is able to knock you out without a full power punch, Darren Till and the distance that he's able to create between him and his opponent would be able to start landing some of those big power shots and eventually would get to Jacare Hermansson, I think.
And Jacare Hermansson's not unhittable. He's not as elusive as an Adesanya or, I don't know, Kelvin Gastelum. I don't know. Gastelum does get hit, but there's some fighters here that you're going to have a really hard time hitting. Jacare Hermansson's not in that class.
No, exactly.
And you talk about a size advantage. I mean, I would want to see the numbers, don't have them in front of me, between Till and Hermansson. But Darren Till, even at middleweight, still a really, really big guy. It's just unbelievable that he made 170 pounds. Good move up for him.
I think it'd be a good fight, though. And Hermansson would have moments, but as a total, Darren Till's probably going to finish.
And I would take Till as well.
Fight Night Picks is brought to you by Strikeforce Energy. Head on over to the website, strikeforceenergy.com. If you enjoy the flavor of freedom, the company's veteran-owned and everything's made in America. They've got great apparel. You can turn any 16.9-ounce beverage into an energy drink. There's no sugar, no calories, no stirring, or no shaking required. They also have a line of different products as well as Strikeforce coffee. So if I head into my cart, I've got a 4-count sample pack. I've got a 20-ounce coffee mug. And if I head into that checkout, use the promo code FNP, click to apply, and you're going to save 20% off any order. That's FNP at StrikeForceEnergy.com.
On to the next round of the bracket. We've got Uriah Hall, Darren Till, Robert Whittaker, Edmen Shahbazyan, Gegard Mousasi, Yoel Romero, and Israel Adesanya, Paulo Costa. Let's go bottom to top as we have with the other videos. Make sure you check those out from flyweight up to welterweight. And we have more videos coming out, especially with light heavyweight and heavyweight coming up soon. Now, in this Elite 8, if you will, of MMA middleweights, Darren Till, Uriah Hall, still a fun fight. Interesting fight. It's just one of those guys is locked in just about every single fight. Uriah Hall, and especially against an Alexander Shlemenko, you get fire with fire. It's one of those fights where I see an easier path to victory for Darren Till than I do Uriah Hall.
Uriah Hall's so much bigger is the problem. Uriah Hall can barely make 185 in the way that Darren Till could barely make 170. So really we're going to have a 205er fighting a 185er. It's interesting because I do think Uriah Hall 100% can knock out Darren Till, and Darren Till can do the same to Uriah Hall. It's just what's more likely. And Uriah Hall throws a lot of those techniques and misses a lot of those spinning back fists, spinning kicks, and whatnot. If he's out of position at least one time, Darren Till's going to make him pay for it. So although I do see a path to victory for Uriah Hall, I just think Till's going to knock him out.
Yeah, taking Till as well. Now, you move up. You've got Robert Whittaker, who's been there and done that. Champion, defended it multiple times. Taking on Edmen Shahbazyan, who's one of the brightest up-and-comers in the game. Came in from Dana White's Tuesday Night Contender Series Season 2. Now he's taking on Robert Whittaker. Now, Whittaker's coming off a fight against Kelvin Gastelum.
Be a tough one.
Very tough fight. Edmen Shahbazyan coming off a very tough fight against Jacare. And the caveat here is something that I originally said. It's a Pride-style tournament. Every fight's in one night, and they're all 5-rounders. I'm taking Robert Whittaker because fatigue has set in for Edmen Shahbazyan.
Do you really think it's Jacare Souza is a harder fight for Edmen than Gastelum is for Whittaker?
No, I don't. It's just that fatigue factor. That's the really telling issue.
I think the damage that Whittaker is going to acquire going into his second fight would be tremendous nonetheless. I also think Robert Whittaker could get up off his couch and probably knock out Edmen Shahbazyan at this point in his career. Just Shahbazyan isn't at that level yet. We're talking about a guy who's still a prospect versus a guy who just lost the title. So maybe 2-3 years down the road, yes, Edmen Shahbazyan's going to be able to beat Robert Whittaker. But right now you have a guy who's one fight removed from a pretty long title reign and another guy who just got put in the top 15. So I see the trajectory of Shahbazyan. He's headed in the right direction. He's just not at his destination yet. So for that, I think Whittaker would finish him.
Shahbazyan just hopping on the bus. Robert Whittaker is the driver. Now, the next fight, Yoel Romero taking on Gegard Mousasi. That's a really fun fight. And if you were to pluck Gegard Mousasi out of Bellator and put him back into the UFC,
I'd like to see this.
It would be a great fight. It's a tough one. Again, you've got Gegard Mousasi coming off probably a lackluster, boring fight against Scott Askham. Possibly. It would have its moments. Yoel Romero coming off a win over Anatoly Tokov.
Where he probably runs through him, let's be honest.
Yeah, like a knife through hot butter, or vice versa. Still, a good fight nonetheless. And it's interesting because I would favor the striking of Romero in this fight. I would favor the wrestling of Romero in this fight. And Gegard Mousasi, I mean, he's won tournaments before. I just wonder...
2007.
Yeah, I wonder how this would happen. This isn't Dream. This is...
Yeah, this is a tough fight for Gegard. Because Gegard, what does he do well? He's got pretty good power on the feet, and he's got really good ground and pound. But you're not going to take down Yoel Romero, and you're probably not going to outpower Yoel Romero on the feet. So... And it's not like Gegard Mousasi's unhittable, like you would kind of mention with Shlemenko. Or Hermansson. Sorry.
Think of beating wrestlers. He ended his UFC reign of a ton of wins with that win over Chris Weidman.
But Chris Weidman isn't like good anymore, and Yoel Romero is still pretty good. So I think Yoel wins this fight quite easily. If you're a big Gegard Mousasi stan out there, then maybe we'll get mean comments. But I just think even at this point in their careers, I don't think either guy's in their prime anymore either. I do think Mousasi's kind of past at this point. But same can be said for Yoel, of course. But Yoel's probably going to finish Mousasi.
We're taking Cuba's Romero over Leiden, the Netherlands, Gegard Mousasi. Now, Israel Adesanya taking on Paulo Costa. It's a fight that probably should have happened, but Yoel Romero got thrown in there. Now we get the real deal. And Paulo Costa, of course, beat Derek Brunson to get here. Not an easy fight. Israel Adesanya beating Jared Cannonier. Again, not an easy fight, but probably a clear path to victory for Adesanya, I would think, over Cannonier, then Costa over Brunson. Really fun matchups nonetheless. Now we get the money fight between Adesanya and Paulo Costa. It's fire and fury. Who's going to take this one?
I don't know. I think Adesanya's going to take it, but this is one of those fights that I just can't really pick a winner. I think Adesanya probably evades the power of Costa, waits till he's tired, and then finishes him late. That's what I would assume happens. But Paulo Costa just has so much power that all he needs is one shot. And Adesanya, yes, he has really good power, and he has kind of that one-punch knockout power, but he has to set traps, he has to wait for you to go into them. I think Paulo Costa is going to fall for a lot of those traps, though, just because of the style in which he employs. He's going to keep on rushing forward, and that's all he's really going to do. So, yes, his one tactic is super effective, but he still just has that one tactic. And for a guy like Israel Adesanya, coached by, and you had mentioned it before, Eugene Bareman, one of the best coaches in the world now, I feel like they would be able to set up a game plan good enough to be able to finish Costa. So I think it's real.
Like, let's pick out, again, a couple of the Costa fights where he just ran through competition. I mean, Johnny Hendricks, but look at the fight against Yoel Romero.
Well, I'm bigger than him.
Romero had some moments in that fight, but Paulo Costa with the pressure, and then you had Yoel Romero's weird rope-a-dope type thing where you thought, is he going to be able to counter and throw great strikes, maybe even finish Paulo Costa? And it just didn't really happen. But where you see a bit of a 1A, 1B in terms of kickboxing, Israel Adesanya, Uriah Hall. Uriah Hall did have moments in that Costa fight where he looked good until he got finished.
The weird thing about that fight, though, just because you did bring it up, Uriah Hall, oddly enough, it wasn't his kicks and it wasn't his big power that was able to keep Paulo Costa at bay. Uriah Hall has a nice jab, and I don't think anyone's talking about that. Uriah Hall just jabbed and jabbed and
pressure.
Exactly. He'd triple up, he'd quadruple up, and he'd move. He'd do it, and then he'd move. And if Uriah Hall's able to do that to somebody, I can almost guarantee you Israel Adesanya's able to do that.
So we've got another round moving on. Adesanya, Romero, Whittaker, Till. A lot of fun fights that continue to happen here. Maybe we get a rematch. Who knows? Israel Adesanya, Yoel Romero, we just had it. And again, I feel like it's a foregone conclusion that Israel Adesanya wins that fight. I don't know. If you just keep throwing Yoel Romero into title fights, maybe this is what you get again. But hopefully it doesn't happen. In this bracket, though, Romero getting over Tokov. Somewhat of an easy fight. Mousasi.
Pretty easy fight.
Yeah. And Adesanya over Costa. That's a tough one. In Cannonier. But again, I would certainly take Israel Adesanya.
Those guys could fight 10 times. Maybe one of the 10 would be exciting, and I feel like the other 9 would probably play out like the one that they just had. And again, it's kind of hard to say that Yoel would beat Adesanya when the fight just happened a couple weeks ago and Adesanya beat Yoel. So no matter what the previous tournament looked like, I just think Adesanya would beat Yoel.
So Adesanya moving on to the finals, your UFC champion and still, and then you have Robert Whittaker and Darren Till, where it gets interesting because for Darren Till, wins over Hermansson and Hall. For Robert Whittaker over Shahbazyan and Kelvin Gastelum. A lot of damage in that first fight against Kelvin Gastelum. A fun matchup nonetheless. What do you think about this one?
This fight, if it was at 100% both guys, I barely know who would win. It's a really fun fight, though. Two phenomenal strikers, two guys who are really popular, too, so it would probably be, like, co-main event pay-per-view, or this is probably going to headline a fight night, which I would assume happens, especially if the rumors are true and these guys do get... Exactly. The rumor is that Darren Till is going to fight Robert Whittaker. It'd be really nice if that does get put together at some point this year. If we aren't taking into account the damage in which they acquired previously, I think Whittaker beats Till. I do. I just think Till, he's had his chin cracked a few times now, and by ways that Whittaker could do it. Because I'm talking to riddles right now. The way Masvidal knocked out Darren Till is something Robert Whittaker does. It's just a regular technique. What Masvidal did was he faked an overhand right, switched his stance, and threw a left overhand. And it's really smart. It's something Tyron Woodley does a lot. It's something Robert Whittaker does all the time, though, where he'll start a stance or start a combination in one stance, and then he'll switch stances mid-combination, end with, an overhand left or power kick or whatnot. And eventually, I think some of those tricks would get to Darren Till. Darren Till is probably going to drop Robert Whittaker 1 or 2 times if they do fight. But Whittaker, I just think, keeps on getting up, keeps on moving forward. With the bracket the way it is, though, I don't think the Hermansson fight's very hard for Till. I don't think the Hall fight's all that hard. I think it could be, but I just don't think it is at this stage. So I think Darren Till would beat Robert Whittaker, and that breaks my heart to say.
Yeah, and I've got Till as well in this one. I mean, you have to think. You've got a knock him down, grind him out type of fight against Kelvin Gastelum. You've got a fight against an Edmen Shahbazyan that, again, is Shahbazyan going to be 100% of that fight? He just took on Jacare, and if he gets a decision win like we probably think that he would, he'd be tuckered out after 5 rounds. So maybe that one's not too tough, but again, it's just a total of accumulation of damage for Robert Whittaker. And there's certainly a path to victory at 100%. But for Darren Till at this point, yeah, I would certainly favor him to get the win there. And listen, just make the fight. Get him at 100%. Make the fight, UFC. Please make it. Now, in the finals, Israel Adesanya versus Darren Till. And this is an Adesanya coming off of Cannonier, Costa, and Romero, all top fights, really top guys in the top of the division. And for Darren Till, again, kind of the same story, but you took on Jacare Hermansson that's kind of got his build his way back up. Uriah Hall's on a 2-fight win streak, but it's building his way back up. Robert Whittaker, who's coming off of a title fight loss. Now you got Darren Till in this fight. I mean, what do you make of it?
If they're at 100%, Adesanya wipes the floor with Darren Till. I know that's a strong opinion to have, but you have two guys who do a lot similar. But Adesanya throws kicks. Darren Till throws kicks, but not really. He's primarily really boxing heavy. He does that thing with his arms where he kind of like, I don't know, he's kind of hulking up and then he throws a big shot. I think Adesanya would be able to see through that. I just think this is another fight where Till has moments in it. He's going to look good at some points because unlike Yoel, he's not just going to stand there and look in the mirror. He's going to be able to land a few shots similar to Kelvin Gastelum. And Kelvin's a southpaw too, just like Darren Till. And Kelvin was able to catch Israel quite a few times with either that right hook or the left straight. Although I think Till's going to have a lot of good moments, I think Adesanya would beat him as well.
That's the thing. I mean, completely see it the way that you do. And you have to take into consideration, again, elusiveness. You have to look at the Gastelum fights for both of these guys and then take into account just the recent performances of Israel Adesanya to get where he is. I mean, it's almost unprecedented. A guy comes into the UFC. I can only think of a handful of people that have had such an impact so quick. Garbrandt's one of them. Brock Lesnar is one of those guys. It just came in, immediate impact, and Israel Adesanya in that same company. And I would hold him to a higher regard because he's beaten some better names as well. And I mean, not to take anything away from Dominic Cruz, but still, just the rise of Israel Adesanya at 185 is crazy. And for him to get a win over Darren Till, it's another quality name, and I think he'd be able to get it done.
Oh, I agree. If Israel Adesanya could beat Jared Cannonier, Paulo Costa, Yoel Romero, and Darren Till all in one night, he's the GOAT. He's the greatest ever. You have no argument from me.
I think Anderson Silva's still the guy, but still,
in one night.
Listen, at 185 pounds, we're talking GOAT status, but we're talking the winner of our bracket. We have Israel Adesanya and still, and make sure you check out the rest of our brackets from 125 all the way up to 265 pounds. I think we probably have some different champions, so you might want to see who wins all of these brackets. Maybe it's not your current UFC champion, maybe it's somebody totally different, so make sure you check those out. As always, you can find us on Twitter and Instagram at Craig Allen FNP, at Matt Allen FNP, at Fight Night Picks, and this is an offshoot, but it's still a part of Fight Night Picks Parry Counter, so make sure you toss us the people that you thought might win this bracket, who we missed out on, because listen, I'm sure there's tons of names you could really switch them up no matter what.
If you wanted Lyoto Machida in here, I did too. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, and also maybe have some questions that you want to have answered for Fight Night Picks Parry Counter, so make sure you throw those down in the comments. And Matt, as we always say with Fight Night Picks,
let's get into it.